Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. This is Dr. Wright, and this is our leadership development class that we host at the Church of Redeemed International Ministries. And I'm sharing it tonight on the church's Facebook Live page. Our leadership and development class tonight is going to be advice about advice. So we'll wait a couple of minutes as some people are coming on. Hey, Fatima, how you doing? I'm making an attempt tonight to do the live streaming on one camera, one iPad, and also record on my telephone to post it on my website. So let's see how that works. So again, this is Dr. Wright, and this is our leadership and development class sponsored by the Church of the Redeemed International Ministries. And tonight's class is going to be advice about advice. That's what we're going to share real briefly on our notes. We'll wait for some more people to come on. Our goddaughter Fatima's in the house. We appreciate her. And we'll wait for some more. I believe my wife is on. So she's trying to get on the face. It's on the church's page. Okay. So she's waiting to get on, and we'll wait for a couple of more people to come on. I'm a little bit late. It is 7:42. We were supposed to start at 7:30. So I'm a tad bit behind, but we're not going to be 9 o'clock. We're going to try to get this done as expeditiously as possible. Of course, as always, if you have any questions, any opinions, just type it in, and we'll be sure as quickly as possible, as promptly as possible, let you come on. Give me one moment. I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? I don't know. Tima said, hey, Nana. Nana said, hey, Tima, and I'm presently trying to work her phone. Hey, Dr. Carolyn. Hey, Booby.
Love you all. Love you, TT.
I hope y'all heard her. I don't know how to use her phone. I don't have a clue. I don't know how to do yours.
Okay, I'll just
Y'all give me one moment while I try to figure hers out. How does it normally come up on yours? Hey, Deacon Jerry, how you doing?
Church.
Find friends. Okay. Church. Church of Redeemed International Ministries. You have to get that. That's from Honey Bun. Watching. Here we go.
Thank you.
All right, C Wrights, y'all are watching. So we got Dr. Carolyn, we got Booby, we got the C Wrights, we got Fatima, we got Deacon Jerry. So look, I guess that's about enough. I think one of the pastors, Elder Glee, was trying to get on earlier, but I wasn't on. So again, y'all know me, Dr. Wright. This is our leadership and development night. Hey, brother Pastor Marvin, our leadership and development course, which is sponsored by our Church of the Redeemed International Ministries. And so tonight, Pastor Carlos, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight, we're going to share briefly. Again, as always, if you have any opinions, any questions, anything you want to share, just type it in. And I do my best to be able to share with you. Tonight, I'm making an attempt to do two things, and I just remembered that. So I'm talking on my iPad, but I'm also recording on my cell phone to put it on our website. So I'm gonna see how that works out this time until I get a little bit more technically sound. So look, we appreciate you guys. Tonight we're gonna talk about or discuss very briefly advice about advice. Advice about advice. I got some notes here that I'm gonna share and I'm gonna be reading off of on some interesting things. Advice about advice. So we're going to first of all talk about how to give advice. Or let's look at the cornerstone of advice. The cornerstone of advice is to ask questions and to have a teachable spirit. That's the cornerstone. The cornerstone of advice, and we're talking about advice about advice. The cornerstone of advice is to, number one, ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're never going to get any advice. Number two is to have a teachable spirit. It's kind of odd that people ask for advice, and I'll get to this later, not really wanting to get the advice. So in order to deal with advice, you have to have a teachable spirit, number one, and you have to be able to ask questions. So I got notes scribbled everywhere for tonight. So I'm going to do my best to try to stay within the gravity of my notes. So the first thing we're going to deal with three things: how to give good advice, how to receive good advice, and why do I seek advice? Hey, Cranberry, how you doing? So how do I give good advice? One of the weaknesses that people have, especially leaders, one of the weaknesses that they have is they don't know how to listen. And listening is an art, because periodically as you listen, you already have an answer before you listen. So you have to learn how to listen. And then in order to give good advice, you have to identify the issue. You must identify the issue. As I go ahead of my notes, there is sometimes the situation is the issue that they're asking you the question of, you don't have the answer to. You have no relevance, no comprehension, no understanding, which means then you're just giving an advice to stroke your ego. So you have to listen, and you yourself, as the person who's giving advice, have to ask the question. Basically, it's good to have a question when they ask you a question. It's kind of like when they ask you a question, you then ask them why they're asking you that question, or why do they need the answer for that question, so you can make sure, hello, Deacon Garrett, that you are giving them sound advice. So the first thing to do is listen. And then the second thing to do, even though you're the one giving the advice, the second thing you need to do is to be able to ask them questions as to why they're asking you for this type of advice. So it's good to have a question to their question. Also, again, make sure that you're proficient in the area that they're asking you the question in. And later in my notes, you'll see I have this purpose from a leadership perspective. I have a purpose in my life to make sure that 90% of the questions that I'm asked, I have the reference to. If I don't have the reference, then I send you to the individual. But that's because I associate myself, which you'll hear later in my notes, I associate myself with people in different genres so I can have the knowledge I need to have to be able to help people along the way, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like, it's hard to ask somebody a money question that does not know anything about money, or does not hang around people that understand how to move money. So it's like when people ask me questions about investments, that's because I associate myself with people who handle investments. I associate myself with reading the books to give me the knowledge to be able to answer the questions. It's not for ego. It's just the fact that I've already done the research to give you the proper answer to help you. But we'll get into that as we go on. And again, if you don't have the answers, then you should also have some reference points. And this is how to give good advice. If you don't have the answers, you should also have some good reference points on where to send them to get the answers. Don't just try to reach something out of the sky to make you look good, to think you have the answer. Especially, it's kind of funny from a business standpoint, and this is advice about advice. I remember there was an acquaintance of mine back in the day when we were talking about businesses, and he was trying to tell me how to run a business. The problem with him telling me how to run a business is he never completed a business. Every business he started, he quit after 2 years. He never completed a ministry. Every church he pastored, he stopped after several years. So you really cannot give me any advice because you haven't completed anything. Does that make sense? So number one, how to give good advice is to make sure that you have the wisdom to share with them what they need to know. Number two, that you listen before you speak. Number three, that you ask them questions as to why they're asking you that question. And here's another good thought, another basic principle. Make sure that you live what you give. Make sure that you live. Again, this is advice about advice. Make sure that you live what you give, because if you're not living what you're giving, you don't need to give no advice. And so now we have people that are sharing advice and they haven't been in a situation long enough to give advice, which is strange. I was conversing with someone today, and they were sharing with me some of the things they've been going through in life. Well, one of the reasons I was reaching out to them because I was led to in my spirit, and I kind of felt like they had been going through a rough time. Well, come to find out when they talked to me, I said, well, I understand because what I've gone through is where you're at. So not to try to direct or lead you, but I can give you some comforting advice to tell you that there is an end to the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And of course, as we always say, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot on it and hold on. because the best is still going to swing around. So that's some of the brief things on how to give advice. Again, when you don't know something, just humble yourself and share with them to go somewhere else. Now let's look at how to receive advice. How to receive advice. So I have this word that I'm going to use, and I need you to listen to this word closely. How to receive good advice. First of all, what you don't want to be is what we call an ask-hole. An ask-hole. You don't want to be an ask-hole. Understand there's a K at the end of that AS. An ask-hole. What is an ask-hole? An ask-hole is a person, I got it written down, a person, because I wanted to research this to make sure I was right. An ask-hole is a person who constantly asks for advice, then they do the opposite of what you told them. How many of us know people like that? An ask-hole. They always ask you for your advice. That's in my profession. I get it all the time. They ask you for your advice, but yet they choose to take somebody else's advice. That's called an ask-hole. What is an ask-hole? An ask-hole, I need to say that right. An ask-hole is basically a person who asks for your opinion or your advice, yet never uses your advice and does the opposite of what you said to do. An ask-hole sometimes asks questions for the sake of asking questions or making conversations. They zone out when they ask you the question, and when you supply them with an answer, they always end up doing their own thing. That's an ask-hole. And how many people, hey, Applesauce and Isaiah, that's right, Fatima, it drives me crazy too. How many of us know some ask-holes? Man, I love that, whether you like it or not, because we have people that don't know how to receive good advice. When you give them good advice, there's a particular scripture in Proverbs that speaks of having wise counsel is having multiple counselors. Spell the word, please. It is Tima. It is literally ASKHOLE. Google it. ASKHOLE. It is an ask-hole. Somebody who asks questions for advice and never follows up with what you told them to do. And we have a lot of that inside the church, outside the church, in businesses, in leadership, in investments. They ask you what to do, but they choose to do their own thing anyway. Well, you just wasted someone's time. And you all wasting my time if it's me you're asking the question to. So how do you receive good advice? Make sure that when you get that advice, you put that advice into action. Don't waste somebody else's time. Be sure to put it into action because they took the time to share with you something that they felt like, again, they felt like would actually help you. Oh, my pleasure, Fatima, my pleasure. So how do you receive good advice? Basically, put it to action. Listen. And don't ask for advice and then have your own opinion waiting. Because if you have your own opinion waiting after you ask for advice, then you really didn't need any advice. You were just trying to share your opinion, which means you're not getting anything out of it. So again, tonight's lesson is advice about advice. Secondly, or thirdly, why do we seek advice? So let me put it this way. Why do I seek advice? It's kind of funny because of what I do. Most people just think, I stay to myself. I select people to associate myself with. And I always select people that know more than me. I don't need the same people to know the same thing I know. I need to be around more people that know more than me so I can grow. Because other than that, I either have an ego issue or I just don't really want to grow. So I always like to be around people that know more so I can get more. So why do I seek it? Why do I myself seek advice? And why should you seek advice? Well, first of all, there's 4, maybe 5 things that make reasons why you should seek advice. First of all, you should seek advice for wise counsel. You should seek advice for wisdom. You should seek advice for learning. You should seek advice for self-confidence. And you should also seek advice if you're hitting a plateau. So if you're hitting a plateau, then you seek advice from others who have hit that plateau and have gone further to find out what caused you to plateau. So you seek advice for counsel. You seek advice to gain wisdom. You seek advice for learning, self-confidence, and a plateau. Now, in the church perspective, one of the funny things about in the church, everybody thinks that they've reached it. Everybody thinks that they've arrived. So in the church perspective, you have pastors that God gave them this great vision and can't nobody do it but them. But that's stupid because he gave that same vision to some other people that went there before you. So we try to, here's an old, I remember this old joke, if you don't mind me taking a few minutes. So there's this old joke with this, they had the Baptist preacher, the Baptist preacher, the Catholic preacher, the Baptist preacher, the Catholic preacher, and the Pentecostal preacher. So the three other preachers went out to go fishing, the Baptist, the Catholic, and the Pentecostal. And so while they went out to go fishing, all of a sudden they got hungry. So the Baptist preacher looked at the Catholic preacher and at the Pentecostal preacher and said, look, gentlemen, it's time to eat. I need a little food. We didn't bring no food. We just brought bait, and I'm not going to eat any bait. So if you want anything, I'm going to go out and get us something to eat. Hello, Pastor Michael Anderson. And so all the other preachers, the Catholic preacher and the Pentecostal preacher said, yeah, I like something. They made the orders. So the Baptist preacher got out, walked across the lake, went on land, got in the truck, came back across the lake, sat in the boat, and gave us something to eat. A couple of hours went by, and the Catholic priest said, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need something to drink. So by that time, the Catholic priest looked at the Baptist preacher and the Pentecostal preacher and said, look, I'm getting ready to go and get something to drink because Brother Reb over there didn't bring enough to drink for the rest of the day, and it's 12 o'clock, and it's hot out here. Do you all want anything? I'm going to go get it. So the Catholic priest stepped out on the lake, walked across the water, got in the truck, drove to the store, came back across the water, and then got back in the boat. 4 o'clock hit, and they said, well, you know, the fish seem to be biting, so maybe we should stay a little bit. So the Baptist preacher said, I agree with that, and the Catholic preacher said, I do too. And then they looked at the Pentecostal preacher and said, well, you know, brother preacher, it's like 4 o'clock. Now, we done made our runs, and we need something to eat, so if you don't mind, can you go and grab us a bite to eat? So the Pentecostal preacher had been scratching his head all along because he's Pentecostal and speaking tongues and holy, holy, holy. And he's trying to figure out how these guys walk across this water. I know Jesus walked across the water, and I know I got faith. I need to find out how they walk across the water. So let me see if I could do what they could do. Remember, the teaching of that is advice about advice. So the Pentecostal preacher got ready to step out the boat. And as he stepped out of the boat, the Catholic priest looked at the Baptist preacher and said, brother preacher, do you think we should have told the Pentecostal preacher where the rocks was that we were standing up on as we walked across the water? Needless to say, the Pentecostal preacher went down in the lake. Now you say, Dr. Wright, what does that have to do with advice? Simple. Why do you seek advice? He should have asked them, how did they walk across the water and not be so holy that he thought he could do what they did? He should have asked them the wisdom on how they navigated the waves. He should have asked them, is there anything I need to learn so I can walk across the water like y'all do? He should have asked them, I don't have as much self-confidence as you do. How do I have the confidence? You understand what I'm saying? So you have to learn to ask good advice from the people who have the answers for what you need, and don't be an ask hole and just get to the advice and don't pay attention to the advice that's given and you fall in the water anyway. I like that. So look, again, because here's what all that means. The value of advice is what you do with it after you receive the advice. That's what makes advice so valuable. So there's some challenges in advice about advice. There's some challenges that we face. The first challenge that we face is the fact that it's easy to become overwhelmed by conflicting voices. We call that noise. It's easy to become See, it's kind of hard. Can I use the church, for instance? It's kind of hard to sit in our church and then go to other churches, because once you go somewhere else that's not teach what I teach, then you start hearing noise. Then you start checking everything I say. Then you start checking and doing everything, because you're now not facilitated in the house. You're getting information from other houses, and that can sometimes cause you to be in a battle because you're hearing different bits of noise. It's kind of hard for you to talk to somebody, and I'm just talking about what I do. It's kind of hard for you to talk to somebody who's in leadership if you're now listening to somebody who's never led anything. Again, this is me. Okay, I'm certified with John Maxwell. I'm certified by several different leadership people. Here's my thing about leadership. It's hard for me to just teach you leadership from a book if I've never been a leader, because I'm not really giving you experience on what you'll face as a leader. I'm giving you something I got out of a book. It's always better to gain leadership experience or leadership advice from someone who has led someone. So if not, then what are you hearing? You're overwhelmed by a conflicting voice. You're just hearing noise. So you got to make sure that you're listening to the right voice and you're getting advice from the right person who has the value to interject or place into you the knowledge that you need. Because we all have vision and purpose, but I guarantee that there's some people that God will put around you to help you facilitate that knowledge that you need to make sure you get to your desired end. Hopefully that makes sense. So you got to be careful of not being overwhelmed by conflicting voices or noise, if you will. The other challenge is so much of advice is about ego that it becomes important to ask questions before giving advice. In other words, if you ask me something, I have to put my ego in check and not just give you an answer to give you an answer. I must put my ego in check and then ask you, why did you ask me that question? Because I have to know the context of the question before I can give you the answer. So therefore, I know if I'm the one qualified to give you the answer. Remember, this is advice about advice. So the same goes for you. If somebody asks you a question, I'm talking about those who are listening. If somebody asks you a question, don't just rattle off an answer. Make sure you ask them a question about the question so you know that you're giving them the answer of the advice in the right context. Other than that, if you can't give them the right answer in that context, then you give them to someone else or tell them to go somewhere else. Don't let your ego get in the way like you got to have an answer. It's kind of like we were talking in the book club yesterday. You know, when we studied the book of Revelations, there's a particular place in there that talks about the seven thunders. And all these theologians give you an answer. There's no answer in the Bible to what the seven thunders mean. But we try to facilitate, or people try to facilitate answers to make them appear to be knowledgeable. I'm ignorant. I'm still learning. That's why I study, because I'm ignorant. There's no wrong with being ignorant. It's probably being stupid. But we keep on going. So let's look at another challenge. The other challenge is we have a natural sense of what I consider to be a natural sense of what I call self-satisfaction about knowing something others do not, which may not be particularly helpful in your effort to give advice. Does that make sense? So we have this kind of like ego. We want to make self-gratification to ourselves the fact that we know something that others may not know. But is that going to be helpful to them? So now that's a whole nother challenge, because I'm supposed to be giving you advice that's going to help you, but I know something that you don't know. But the problem is what I know that you don't know going to help you in this situation? It might not be something that I particularly need to share with you. You might not even be ready to get that deep. Does that make sense? It's kind of like A, B, C, D. You want to jump right to E without going through B, C, and D. Just because I know what E is going to bring, I don't need to share with you what E is going to bring, because in order for you to grow, you have to do B, C, and D. In other words, the quick route is not always the best route. You're going to hear about that later. The quick route is not always the best route. Again, this is just advice about advice. The timing of both giving and receiving advice is directly related to the quality of the interaction. Timing. So timing is also, here we go. You need to know when to ask for advice. And the person you're asking the advice to needs to know the proper timing to give you the answer to your advice. Does that make sense? Again, there's places that I've been and places that where I'm at today that he showed me 1984. If he'd have did it 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been prepared. So there's timing in everything, and always be sure of your timing. So let's look at some key questions. And if you got any statements, any opinions, I appreciate the thumbs up, the hearts, the laughs, but just let me know that you're here. Turn the Netflix off and pay attention. That was just a joke. So let's look at some key questions and make this statement that leaders should always give advice to help the individual, not to pump their ego. Leaders should always give advice to help the individual, not to pump their ego. Think about that. So here's some key questions that you, as the person seeking advice, should ask yourself. Number one, where should I get it? Where should I get the advice? Number two, who should I listen to? Who should I listen to? Number three, how do I seek it? Y'all want to do that again? Where should I get the advice? Where do I get the advice? So I want to start a school, a private school. So I got advice from a pastor who's already started his school. So I know what I need to do to establish a school. Who should I listen to? I only listen to people that are going in the same direction that I'm going in, as far as ministry is concerned. Now, outside of that, well, it's still the same. Because from investments, let me tell you a secret about investment. I'm not going to listen. Don't y'all get offended. I'm just being me. I'm not going to listen to nobody to give me investment strategies and they live in a $100,000 house. I'm not going to pay them any attention. That's me. I'm not going to listen to anybody, and this is me trying to help you. I'm not going to listen to anybody on investment advice, and I don't see their portfolio making any money. They're not helping me. So it's kind of dumb. So when I tell people investment strategies or investment wisdom, trust me, I done talked to the guys that drive the Rolls Royces and the Bentleys and got multiple properties and things of that nature, because I need to know how they manage and move their income. So who should you listen to? And then how do you seek it? And today there's so many different ways of seeking out knowledge that is crazy. Other than the internet, again, most of you guys on here have read some of John Maxwell's books, or you know his story. It's kind of funny. Maxwell used to actually take people out to lunch and pay for their lunch just to ask them questions, just to give them wisdom. That's basically where it came from. At I think 22 or 28, he had the 10th largest church in America under his denomination. But he learned how to ask questions. And then after that, because he was basically going leadership versus pastoring, he came out and started teaching leadership. It's so amazing that when he tried to teach leadership perspectives to the church didn't want to hear him. But the business world did. So sometimes when you ask or you teaching or whatever, sometimes the people around you don't want to hear it. It's the people outside of you that want to take knowledge of it. So then, again, I answer the question, how do you seek it? You have to seek after those that have what you desire to acquire. And again, don't be an asshole. Make sure when they give you the advice, you follow the advice. Amen? Amen. So let's look at some important guidelines. And a few minutes after that, we'll be finished. Again, as I said, if you have any questions, any opinions, just type it in. Hopefully I'm not wasting your time, but this is advice about advice. Simple as that. So here's some important guidelines. Always remember, the value of advice is what you do with it after you receive it. The value of the advice is what you do with it after you receive it. There's no need in writing it down and you don't apply it. It has to be applicable. There's so many times I know people got notes. I do it. I used to do it in multi-level marketing. I just take notes. What my stupidity was that the notes I'm taking, the notes I already know. I just have to apply it. So if I'm not applying it, I just got notebooks. You know what I'm saying? Which is strange because now on the investment side or the biblical side, I take notes that give me knowledge and I keep going over and over and over because that's my passion. So whatever your passion is and you're asking advice on that, it's not the advice you gain, but it's what you do with the advice after you've gained it. Another guideline is we should all strive to maintain a teachable spirit. And that can be hard because some people don't have teachable spirits. Some people just think that they know everything, or they think it has to go their way. And you don't need to ask for my advice. Because if you ask me for my advice, but yet you have your opinion, then you need to just do what you want to do. Because other than that, my advice is not helping you. You just wasted valuable time. And time is everything. It's not just money, it's everything. So always strive to maintain a teachable spirit. The third thing that is an important guideline is ask questions when receiving and giving advice to create context. So whether you're giving the advice or whether you're receiving the advice, always ask questions. Why? Because that creates a context. In other words, that creates a conversation. We're going not back and forth, but we're sharing. So if you ask for my advice, it is my duty to ask you a question as to why you asked the advice to give us some context. If I'm asking somebody for advice, when I ask them for advice, I'm going to ask them what made them give me that advice and how do they think it's going to help me? Because the main reason I'm asking for advice is so it can facilitate change. That's the end of my subject later, but it has to facilitate change. We'll get into that in a minute. The fourth thing to look at is to seek advice from a variety of sources. Remember, I talked about Proverbs. I used to hate that because I didn't understand it. Proverbs said get multiple counsel. But it also states that multiple counselors should be in the same venue that you're seeking your primary advice from. So seek advice from a variety of sources. So I just use what I do. So from investments, I seek advice from people that do 401ks. I seek advice from people that do Roths, IRAs. I seek advice from people that do value stocks, dividend stocks. I seek advice from all these different people. I seek advice from diamonds and gold and oil. I seek advice from all these different people to come to a consortium of what I need to do next. I get advice from a variety of sources. When I deal with the Bible, I listen and deal with people in the faith movement. You know, the Bible, we got so many different movements. The faith movement, the claiming and naming movement. Sorry. What is that? What is this? The kingdom movement, which is really not a movement. But I try to get all these, the prophetical movement, if you will. I study all these different areas to see what God is telling me to teach to our body. So I have to get advice from a variety of sources. If I want to have an evangelistical side type of ministry, then I need to sit up under a covering and then take that wisdom for foundation, and then also listen and watch how other evangelistical ministries function. If I want to have a 200-member church, then I need to talk to somebody that has a 500-member church. Does any of this make sense? If I want to have 1,000 members, then I need to talk to somebody that has 1,000. I can't figure that out with 20. I need to talk to the person that has 1,000. Again, like I said earlier, I want to start a school. So I need to talk to a pastor that has a school so they can give me the wisdom. So you seek advice from a variety of sources that's in line with where you want to go. Make sense? Thumbs up, hands up, throw them in the air, whichever. Then you got to also validate the person prior to seeking the advice. In other words, make sure you're getting your advice from a responsible source. So you got to validate the person prior to seeking the advice. In other words, like I said earlier, make sure the person is living what they're advising. And you should do the same thing. Make sure you're living what you're giving advice on. Because other than that, you just wasted that person's time. How does that sound? Cool. Again, let's look at this. And these are just important guidelines. Give me a few more minutes. We'll have you out. Avoid becoming a collector or an advice shopper or just seeking advice and doing the opposite. You know, asshole. So let's look at this again. Don't just collect advice or be a shopper of advice and never do what you was advised to do. It's just a way. You just wasted everybody's time. You wasted your time, their time. Everybody's time is being wasted. And guess what time is? Everything. And what we don't have time to do is wasted. So think about it. So I love this part. Always reflect. Advice about advice. Always reflect, or shall we say reflection, is a critical part of the process. Always balance your feelings with the facts. Always balance your feelings with the facts. Now, there's been some people that I know really didn't like me. It's okay. They got what I need. I'm going to seek their advice. That makes sense? Because they got what I need. So I ain't got time for all that craziness. I just need the advice. So take time to reflect. Reflect on the advice that you receive, and always balance between your feelings and the facts. Because you might feel like what they gave you was not good advice, and then you mess up. So you need to balance between feelings and the facts. So here's how you reflect. What do I feel? What do I know? What do I feel? What do I know? In other words, the facts. What do I think? What do I do? That's after you get the advice. These are the things you reflect on. What do you feel? What do you know? The facts. What do you think? What do you do? See, now after you reflected on all that, then you know you need to do what they told you to do, because that's the reason you asked them what you should do. Now, the stupidity for me is the fact that even when someone asks me for advice, the first thing that I even ask myself is, how do I feel, and are they prepared for what I'm getting ready to share? That's how I think. I'm going to ask them a question, but then I want to know, it's kind of crazy. I kind of have a feeling 90% of the time whether they're going to pay attention to the advice I give them or not. I kind of already know. That's just me. I'll still give you the advice, but I kind of know whether you're going to follow the advice or not. That's just how I feel. What do I know when I give advice? I need to make sure that I know the facts and the context of the conversation before I give you the facts. What do I think? I should be able to think more highly of you than I think of me. So in other words, the advice that I give you should not be advice to benefit me. It should be advice to benefit you. So in other words, I'm not ego stroking myself just to give you advice. I need to make sure that my ego is in check and I'm giving you advice that's going to better help you. Hopefully that makes sense. And then what do? Then I need to make sure that what I do is to make you better than what you are. That's my purpose. And that should be the purpose of anybody that's sharing advice. So let's look at something. There's no such thing, and we're still doing the guidelines. We'll be through in a minute. There's no such thing as what we would consider to call self-awareness. Self-awareness basically means you know everything, you got everything. We don't, because all of us have blind spots. We all have blind spots. That's why I always have people around me. I have blind spots. That's why I ask questions. I never forget this years ago. Years ago, one of my elders made a statement, and she said, "Apostle, I'm proud of you because I see that you've grown." Now, I had a pastor ask me, "Did that offend you?" I said, "No." I said, "For God's sakes, no." I said, "I'm glad somebody see I've grown. God forbid it's 2020 and 30 years later, I am the same way I was when I started the church in 1990. God forbid that I would be that foul. God forbid." So it's good, even from a leadership perspective, to realize that somebody can come and share with you, "Man, I'm proud of you because you've grown." Now, even on your end, you don't need to have this thing called self-awareness, meaning that you already know that you got it going on. That's impossible because we all have blind spots. I look at it like this. Everybody can teach me something. Everybody. It's kind of like, we got these kids today. They get these cell phones. They 5 years old. They can program your phone and everything. They can tell you how to go everywhere you need to go on the phone, and you can't figure it out. They 5, 7, 8, 9 years old. They're already on the phone. Everybody can teach you something. And everybody can teach me something because I don't know everything. Remember that. Yeah, you remember that statement? Yeah, that was pretty cool. So, again, as we get ready to finish this up, not bad, 40 minutes. Avoid quick fix, easy answers. There's no quick fix. There's no quick fixes. Can I tell you another secret? It took me 30 years. There's a price for improvement.
Yes, it is.
There's a price for improvement. Advice is free, but change is not. Advice is free. Change is not. You have to pay a price for change. If it's easy, you haven't changed. It's kind of like we always teach people from a leadership perspective. If your dream is not big enough, if your dream is not to the capacity to where it takes others to help you, that's really not a dream. Your dream, your desire should be so large that you can't complete it on your own. It has to be something that's so out of the world that you need some people in the world to help you accomplish it. Other than that, it's not even a dream. It's just a little bit of a desire, and you're going to accomplish it. So in other words, it's not about you. It's about the impact that becomes a part of you when you facilitate change. Advice is free, but change is not. You're going to pay a price for change. And you also pay a price with quick fixes because nothing happens quickly. You have to avoid them get-rich-quick schemes. And, I done been involved in a couple of them. You buy your meat and you get this person to buy $100 worth of meat. You get this person to buy $100 worth of meat. You get this person to buy $100 worth of meat. And everybody keep buying this bunch of meat. Everybody just everybody gets a piece of the meat that they bought. Yeah, okay. I lost that $500 deal. There's no such thing as quick fix. There's no easy answers. You're going to pay the price for improvement. You either pay the price for improvement or you pay the price for the lack thereof. So, I got some scribbling here. So I'm trying to, that's where I want to go. With advice about advice and you taking advice. It's kind of like David. Don't go to battle with somebody else's armor on. Don't do that. Make the change. Get your armor together so you can facilitate change in somebody else's life. So I finished with this. And here's one of the things I notice. The older I get, the more questions I ask. The older I get, not talking about you, but the older I get, I notice the more questions I ask. How, why, when, what for? Is it possible? Which way do I go? How do I go about this? Is this possible? Can I change this? Can I do this? Let's do this. So the older I get, the more questions I ask. So in my closing, advice about advice. What is the main advice about advice? What's up, Apostle Pope? What is the main advice about advice? Here we go. The cornerstone is to ask questions and have a teachable spirit. The person giving advice, make sure you live what you give. Make sure you live what you give. Amen. I pray that this has been okay. I pray that you receive this. It took us 40 minutes. I appreciate all y'all that have been on. I pray that you've gotten something out of this. I'm going to give about 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds, because I know there's a 30-second break lag, or 10 to 15 seconds lag. So if there's anybody that have any questions, any opinions, I'd like for you to ask them now or share your opinion. If you will, please. I appreciate it. And then we're going to post this on the church's site. I'm also trying to put it on my YouTube. I think it recorded it. I don't know how much. But if you have any questions, I appreciate it. I'm going to cancel the YouTube one now. I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to just post it on my YouTube page. Hi, bye.